All right, we're going to read An Influence Across the Border. As just a preview, you can see the pictures here are all about art. This particular article is going to be all about art, and especially the American painter Jackson Pollock. He's a very famous painter. You probably have seen his paintings. It'll talk about other artists as well, just as a preview. There's 4 sections, 5 including the introduction. I'll pause after each section to just kind of talk about what it is. So here we go. An influx of influence across the border. Jackson Pollock's best-known influences are great European modernism like Pablo Picasso and Juan Miro, but often overlooked is the artist's time at the New York City's Experimental Workshop, founded in 1936 by David Alfaro Siqueiros, who, along with Diego Rivera and Jose Clemente Orozco, led the post-revolution Mexican muralism movement. As an impressionable young painter there, Pollock was exposed to the techniques that would shape his signature drip paintings more than a decade later. A new exhibit at the Whitney Museum of American Art, Vida Americana, aims to rectify such oversights. The show shines a light on the Mexican artists whose politically charged populist work shaped some of the most significant American artists of the 20th century, from Pollock to Philippe Gaston. The exhibit places Mexican work next to those of Americans who borrowed, often heavily, from their themes and methods. Then, as now, concerns around citizenship and migration fueled and complicated cultural exchange, leading to innovation as well as questions about appropriation and ownership. Here are several pairings that illustrate the breadth of influence that came across the border from 1925 to 1945. Again, the introduction is just talking about the influence that Mexican artists had on American artists. So the first one is going to talk about, let's see if I can do this. Yeah, so there's this. So number 1, there's this painting here, which is kind of red and just kind of dark. And then here's the second painting that they're comparing it to. All right, so let's read the first section, Ritual and Myth. Orozco made what is considered to be the first modern fresco mural by a Mexican artist on U.S. soil in 1930 when he was commissioned to paint Prometheus, which is that top painting, at a new dining hall at Pomona College in California. The mural, a reproduction of which is displayed at the Whitney, is heralded by critics and artists. Pollock made a trip to California to see it for himself and would later hang a reproduction in his studio, as he considered it the greatest painting done in modern times. Pollock's circa 1938 to 1934 and 1938 painting The Flame, which is the bottom one, depicts a semi-abstract fire and a skeleton, showing the influence not only of Prometheus but also of Orozco's early 1930s mural at Dartmouth College, The Epic of American Civilization. In Greek mythology, Prometheus is said to have gifted humans with fire, defying the gods. Orozco relied on the myth to convey the eternal struggle of mankind, constantly progressing and regressing throughout time. Pollock's early work heavily explored ritual and myth as well, before he developed the even more abstract style that would bring him great fame. So just as a look back at the 2 paintings that they're comparing. So this one is the Mexican artist one, and that's the Prometheus one. And then this one is the second one that I'm drawing a line next to. That is Pollock's work, which is kind of similar. You can kind of see. All right. Let's see if I can erase. Oh, that's not right. Okay. We're going to read on. Let's just go back to my pointer. All right. So we're going to go to 2. Before we go to 2, these 2 paintings are compared next. This one that I'm just looking kind of looks like a mountain, kind of brownish. There's lots of kind of, I don't know what's going on there, weathering things. Let's read our number 2 section all the way down here. The anxiety of influence. Pollock was never forthcoming about his time working with Siqueiros. Curator Barbara Haskell explains this omission by pointing to what Harold Bloom called the anxiety of influence. Pollock likely struggled to navigate the ambiguous line between Siqueiros' ideas and his own. The American painters circa 1937, or landscape with steer at the bottom, may have been completed about 2 years before Sequeiros' The Electric Forest on Top, but it speaks to the remarkably similar headspace the artists were in. The commonalities are striking, with both works adhering to Sequeiros' philosophy that in order to make truly radical art, artists must shed old practices and pioneer completely new methods. So again, just looking at these two and looking at how the two artists are relatively similar paintings. The colors are different, but just this idea of nature and what it can do is similar. And then it shows how the Mexican artists are influencing the American artists. All right, 3, glory and censorship. So that is, yep, that's these two here in the center, these two paintings right here. You can see they're two kind of factory type paintings. You can even see that the people are in similar positions with their bodies and both in factories. So let's read about that. Impressed by artists' ability to create such epic works with the mission of unifying a war-torn Mexico, President Franklin Roosevelt saw the need for a similar movement in the United States in the midst of the Great Depression. Roosevelt established the Works Progress Administration's Federal Art Project in 1935 with the aim of making art a part of public life. At the Whitney, a mural study of William Groper's automobile industry bottom, which was originally installed in a Detroit office, shows a glorified vision of the working class in industrial America, with men laboring collaboratively to build a car. The lower panel of Diego Rivera's Detroit industry murals depicts a romantic, racially integrated vision of the auto industry. One chief difference between the Mexican works and their American successors was the ability of the former to hold more depth and nuance, as they largely went uncensored, with the exception of Rivera mural at Rockefeller Center, which was destroyed in 1934 after the artist refused to remove a portrait of Vladimir Lenin. Federally commissioned works were closely scrutinized, with controversial content often removed in service of an unambiguously, if also unrealistically positive and often whitewashed vision of America. So what that's kind of saying is this bottom one, so this is the American artist, and they would have been maybe censored or maybe portrayed the work as sort of like a glorified, like, isn't everything great? And this top one here is the Mexican art and maybe portrayed a more realistic version of what life looked like in a factory. All right, 4. So that's probably the most dramatic looking one. It's this woman tied up here, and then it's a little bit hard to see. Can we zoom in a little bit? And yep, and so just some, you can see this black and white one. Just some, definitely people are being tied up. It looks like some kind of oppression for sure. So let's scroll down and read number 4, agitating for change. The muralists did not shy away from depicting the injustices of the era. Sequeiros was imprisoned several times by the Mexican government for his radicalism. His 1933 Proletarian Victim portrays a woman shot in the head, bound and stripped, an apparent casualty of political violence. American artists also began to leverage art to agitate for social change. Hale Woodruff, an African-American artist who apprenticed with Rivera, depicted racial terror in a series of black prints. In his 1935 lino cut Gadap, a crowd of white men cheer at the lynching of a black man. We are interested in expressing the South as a field, as a territory, its peculiar rundown landscape, its social and economic problems, the Negro people, Woodruff told Time in 1942. Like Sequeiros, he hoped his work would educate audiences by elucidating in undeniable visuals the plight of the oppressed. What that last part is kind of saying is that they wanted to just show, let's go back up. They wanted to just show the struggles that people are having in art. So there's the woman, and then the lynching in this black and white one. All right. You can keep answering the questions.